discussed on this podcast are determined by the Justice Coordinating Commission of the Sisters of Providence of St. Mary of the Woods, Indiana. Guest opinions do not necessarily reflect those of the Sisters of Providence. To learn more, go to www.spsmw.org.
Welcome to Just Us, where we talk about creating an equitable human community and influencing change. Through shared stories, conversation, and inspiration, you will learn how you can make a difference in your community. I am your host, Jane Fisher. And in today's episode, I'm going to be introducing our guest, Maria Price, who is joining us in our shared space to discuss the experience of homelessness, motivated by her experiences and insights in that field. Let's begin to take action for the common good. Maria, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us your story about working with those who experience homelessness and what drew you to this work in the field of justice?
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Jane, for the opportunity to be here today. I appreciate this. So I found myself, I say my first love was in community organizing. And regardless of the specific issue around which I may have been organizing for about a dozen years, the undercurrent to everything was economic justice. And it just seemed to be the thread, whether it was environmental justice or, racial justice, economic inequality and economic justice seemed to be the thing that drew me the most to and fueled my passion to do my part to make the world a better place. So I also found community organizing work to be challenging in that I loved the leadership development. I love systemic change. And I really needed to balance out that long-term work with something more, just something more tangible and immediate. And I started volunteering at St. John's Center for the Homeless. And that was in 1995. And I just served a 2-hour shift at this facility that was a social services center here in Louisville, Kentucky. And it was a wonderful opportunity to just meet an immediate need in whatever simple way that I could at that time. So fast forward, when a staff position opened up at St. John's Center, I really had not ever seen myself at a direct service organization, but St. John's Center was different. And I saw that the people experiencing homelessness that we served at St. John's Center were survivors in spite of everything, but that they had been on the short end of the stick of multiple failed systems. And I just could never quite understand how we could have failed so many people so clearly. And I wanted to just get to do my part to be part of the solution to that. So I ended up serving as executive director and working at St. John's Center for 15 years. And it was absolutely a wonderful experience.
And then I hear you said it's time for a change.
Yes, I loved what we could do, and we had worked really hard through a strategic plan to position ourselves to be able to expand our supportive housing work. And the way we were going to do that is to build our own single site housing facility. And some funding opportunities expedited the plan, which is great news for the community. But I knew I had a few more years in me, but not 5 or 7 more years in me. So I wanted to hand over the reins to someone with fresh energy so that I wouldn't be in a position of leaving in the middle of a development, a major construction project. So and so St. John Center is in very, very capable hands. And what a gift to have. It truly is the great privilege of my life to have gotten to be there, to take a bit of a break. And now I work at Habitat for Humanity. So I'm equally thrilled that I am still involved in the affordable housing arena.
That's wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're going to get into what you think are the causes of those who experience homelessness. But first, I went out and just Googled it. I love how the word Google has become a verb. And I looked for homeless vocabulary. And this is what I found. I couldn't believe it. Displaced, dispossessed, houseless, unhoused, derelict, destitute, down and out, itinerant, bag lady, and vagrant. And I thought, is this what in the world would cause all of that to come up when I searched for homeless vocabulary?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
And isn't it interesting that those are words that describe some person's idea of an individual, and they are unsavory labels in many situations. And it in some of the words that you described, it flatly puts blame on the individual who's experiencing homelessness.
Exactly.
Misplaced.
So what do you think? What do you understand from your years as the causes of how one becomes homeless?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's really important that we understand the complexities of the causes of homelessness, because that can inform solutions to homelessness. The vast majority of homeless individuals in the United States are people who have experienced a collision or a conflict or a series of experiences that really is the nexus between personal circumstances and systemic issues. So personal circumstances are things like somebody's educational attainment, somebody's cognitive ability. A personal circumstance is whether or not you were raised in a two-parent family. Personal circumstance might also be that if you're living in a unsafe or a domestic violence situation. So those are individual experiences, points in time, or attributes in your life. Unfortunately, we have this myth in this country that personal circumstances are the number one cause of homelessness. And I beg to differ. And in fact, personal circumstances are often a factor, but really systemic issues are the overarching impetus that would leave someone with whatever set of personal circumstances without the safety net that they need to be able to remain stable and on a forward trajectory in their life. So by systemic issues, I mean those things that are bigger than any one person's attributes or any one person's specific experience, but it's more a construct around which we have organized systems or institutions. So we have, many systems guide the way we work and govern in this country. And just a couple of the systems that, in my experience, are primary and pivotal in the causation of homelessness, either falling into homelessness or keeping people homeless, would be the healthcare system and also housing. The cost of housing, the gap between individual wages or income and the cost of housing, and how that gap continues to grow and grow and grow. So when an individual has a low educational attainment, they may or not be able to work in a high wage job, which, by the way, wages in our economic system is another system and construct. So if you're working a low wage job, and you might even be working 40, 50, 60, 65 hours a week, and your wages may be stable, but in most cities and counties in this country, the cost of housing has not been stable in the last 5 years. It's been increasing. So that gap continues to grow, making it more and more difficult for people to afford housing. We, at the same time, have not prioritized building affordable housing, especially for the lowest income neighbors among us. And we haven't prioritized maintenance of public housing. So whether it's Section 8 is the old phrase, or public housing, which what we would used to call that the projects, just keeping those units maintained on an annual basis so that they continue to provide decent, safe, and affordable housing has been put on the back burner. So we have really created a crisis situation in the housing we have available. So then add to that the crisis of maybe a health care emergency in your household. And if your wages are set back and then you've got medical bills, that can be two things. And your individual circumstance might be that you are working a low wage job and that you're working your best and your hardest, and that is the best wage you can make at this time. So you can see how those things come together. So a personal circumstance and systemic issues can come together to put someone in a precarious situation. And too many people tip over that edge and fall into homelessness. And once someone has fallen into homelessness, it is very difficult to put the pieces back together.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for that, to bring those two sides together.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard you talk in the past about a housing program called Housing First. And can you explain that and tell us what the current congressional happenings are with Housing First? That's a different approach, isn't it?
Yes, I'd love to tell you about Housing First. So, and Housing First is really one of the solutions to homelessness. So I love that we're catapulting right into solutions to homelessness. So we found through practice and documenting experiences and good research that there is a model now called Housing First that is particularly effective with folks who meet the definition of chronically homeless. So the best way to imagine that person in that meets that definition is that they've been homeless multiple times throughout multiple years, or one consistent stint of homelessness for a year or more. So chronically homeless individuals, I think of them as clearly the folks who have so many challenges that so it's often mental health challenges, often also physical health or illness, or chronic and complicated health issues, combined with also often substance use disorder. So that's a lot for that individual. And it can lead someone without a lot of support and guidance to really struggle to keep all the pieces together to be able to obtain and maintain housing. Mm. So Housing First is a model that says, let's work with the folks who need the most help and give them the most help. So there are for sure folks experiencing homelessness who really could, with a little support with maybe higher wages, structure to be able to keep a job, some transportation support, so if work is the issue, and then be able to afford an apartment and they can get out of homelessness. So there are definitely people for whom an intervention, whether it's about wages or health, mental health, or recovery, they can be back on their path. Chronically homeless individuals need the most help. And so with Housing First, we say, let's put our arms around them and give them the most help. And it starts with housing. So we say, Jane, if you're experiencing homeless and you're chronically homeless, we would love to help you have this apartment. Your name is on the lease, and you will be working with a case manager and other professionals who really support you so that you can maintain your own apartment. This is, you have to do what everyone else has to do in this complex to keep their apartment. So no illegal behavior, no illegal drug use, etc. So the Housing First model starts with the premise that housing is a right, that everyone deserves housing. And the proven research shows us that once you have housing, you begin to stabilize. You really begin to believe, oh gosh, even I deserve housing. And you want to address the mental health, the physical health, and maybe even the addiction issues that were contributing factors into your homelessness. So it's not housing only. And it's really truly housing first, allowing someone the time and the support to stabilize, and then they get to articulate and be ready for those next steps. And they want to then take the medicine that might not feel good, but it's better than those voices in my head, for example, or follow the PT regimen, or try recovery for the 11th time or the 1100th time. But they aren't alone. They have the support of a case manager, and they know that they have this housing. And that, you know, I've again and again and again seen the clients at St. John's Center just do heroic work to be able to keep their housing because it is so important and valuable to them. Another myth that we have out there, Jane, is that people just want to live on the streets. And that is not my experience. People want to be safe. And, you know, I will say some of the most challenging situations are when people have given up, or individuals had given up believing in themselves and believing that they deserved housing. And maybe in their words, they would say, I've blown it 10 times before. I don't want to risk it again. But those other 10 times, they didn't have a case manager supporting them to help them through the bumps in the road. I don't know about you, Jane, but I have needed friends. I have needed professionals. I have needed my family to help me through bumps in the road, whether it's, you know, intense grief or a financial setback. You know, there are times when we just need an ally, and we need the support. That buddy system that I have enjoyed in my life with friends and family and my tight safety net is something not everyone has. So we are able to create that with the housing work and using the Housing First model in our work.
I think what I hear you saying too is this contributes, this privacy that is established to them, this type of ownership by having the lease, the resources and friendship that develop with support around them contributes to the restoration of dignity.
Absolutely. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. One of my favorite things to ask the folks who had gotten into housing and maybe it was 2 months down the road, my favorite thing to ask is, what are you enjoying the most? And very frequently the answer would be, I can make my own coffee. I don't have to stand in line for coffee, and I don't have to stand in line for a bathroom. I can have my own bathroom. So just the basic dignity and privacy and, you know, something we would all want. And congregate living would have to be just so challenging and exhausting. And the ability to really actually get good sleep is just so important. So there is a move afoot. I do want to mention that, so the Housing First model was really tested originally and researched through Pathways to Housing in New York City. And New York City to this day has resources, supportive resources that we'll never see in Kentucky. It's just the way different states run their budgets. But that model was working so successfully. And again, just for this chronically homeless population, the solutions are not a one size fits all. So no one should pretend that it is. So it was actually during the George W. Bush administration that the Bush administration really challenged HUD, Housing and Urban Development, the federal department that provides federal funding for agencies right on the ground in Louisville or Indianapolis or Jasper or Hawaii, any place, to be able to provide services, ideally housing coupled with services. So it was the Bush administration that said Housing First is working for the chronically homeless. The population of chronically homeless individuals is growing. So we're making extra money available for agencies willing to try this model. And it was found to be successful over now decades. However, there is a move afoot to dismantle Housing First as a model. It's called Treatment First. So it really it reverses the model that has been accepted as a best practice in Kentucky. There's always been resistance, but in some places for 20 years, what it says is, back to you, Jane, if you're the person who's experienced homelessness for multiple years, decades, it says, Jane, we're going to give you some short-term housing, and we want you to go to treatment. So whether it's your mental health or your addiction, you work on that and you prove to us that you are housing ready. And then we'll see if we can find you an apartment, or prove to us that you can get that job and keep it. So I find that very disconcerting. When I read any literature that would promote Treatment First as opposed to Housing First, I find the arguments to be dubious. But there is for sure, it's gaining traction throughout Congress right now. It's actually the Conservative Heritage Foundation has put some energy into dismantling Housing First as a model and trying to replace it with Treatment First. So I would urge all of our listeners to express to their congressional representatives that Housing First is an approach that works, that you support the agencies that use that model. And if our listeners don't know of those agencies, then that would be the first step, to find who's providing housing and supportive services to people experiencing homelessness in your area, and see what their experience is. What does success look like for them? I know that in Louisville, I'll speak first for St. John's Center, we had 98% retention year over year with people who for 5, 10, and 20 years previous to that getting in housing had lived very often on the streets, on the riverbank, under overpasses, behind abandoned retail space.
And under this program, they're proving that they can do it.
Exactly. Again and again.
But housing came first.
Right. Right.
Oh, wow. So we need to contact. That's one of our calls to action here.
Yes.
Is to contact our congresspeople and our elected officials. What are some other solutions to help reduce the number of people experiencing homelessness?
Yes, so glad you asked. So we really have at least 40 years of flawed housing policy to make up for. We have got, I mean, the number of people living on the streets is, it's criminal, it's growing. And folks, I think around the country had really tried to pretend like not many people are in that much, that dire of a situation. It's okay. But they can't ignore it any longer. The level of street homelessness is on the rise, and let that be our national call to action. If not before, then now, and we have some making up to do. So we have to invest in the creation of more affordable housing for very low income people. And, as long as housing is a for-profit industry in this country, we're going to need government to help subsidize building and maintaining affordable housing to make it possible for developers to actually afford to develop the affordable housing. So it is, once again, it's an issue of our budget, our federal budget, our state budgets, and your municipal budget or county budget. They are an ethical document and a moral document, a guide for the community. So I'm saying we have to prioritize building and maintaining more affordable housing for the lowest income people. So, because we had fallen behind, dramatically fallen behind. So that's absolutely critical. The standard is that no household should spend more than 30% of their income on their housing costs. So whether it's rent or mortgage, affordable is 30% of your income. The National Low Income Housing Coalition has a state-by-state, city-by-city breakdown. So another call to action would be to visit that website and find out if your county or town or city has enough affordable housing based on the area median income. Can people earn the prevailing wage in your county and be able to afford the housing that is available in your county?
Can you repeat that site again?
Yes, the National Low Income Housing Coalition.
Thank you.
So yes, we need to build, create more, and maintain housing for very, very low income neighbors of ours. We also need more flexible housing. And what I mean by that is there are folks for whom an efficiency apartment is really all they want and all they need, and it's the best they can do. And they need a small facility that isn't overwhelming. They need the support of a case manager to help them get through the day. And it might mean a light touch, not a case manager all up in my business every day. But that kind of community-based, small and intentional housing community, those are very hard to come by because they are expensive. So I know that in this country, we want a quick fix when something is unpleasant, and we don't like the thought that people are on the streets, that are living and dying on the streets, nor should we. We have gotten ourselves into this mess, and the solution is not inexpensive, and it's not easy. Now, I'm not saying that it's complex. I think the solutions are within reach, but we have to have the commitment as a community to follow through. And that means a budgetary commitment at every level, local, state, and federal. So that would be the other call to action to your local, state, and federal elected officials, that you believe the time is now to prioritize housing and support services for people who need them the most. We do need a multitude of recovery options. This country was not ready for the opioid epidemic, and it has made a difference in the number of people who fall into homelessness and then struggle to get out. Often again, someone who ends up chronically homeless is often the person who didn't have that tight family safety net that could help them through years and years or decades of addiction and efforts at recovery. So I'm grateful that we do have a number of kinds of treatment options in the country. And I would just suggest that that's another bit of research anyone could do, is find the agencies in your community that are providing treatment options, whether it's for addiction, treatment for mental health issues and support for mental health, and then also, of course, attending to our physical health issues. The number of people that live with poverty because they have chronic complicated health issues is just another symptom of a system that has prioritized profits over people.
And for families or loved ones who are seeking solutions and trying again, what's their first place to go? Sometimes I hear that they'll think, well, let's just put them in assisted living, or let's just put them in a group home. What do you think?
Well, it really would just depend on that circumstance and where someone would be the most successful. Not everyone is built for a group home or needs that kind of an intensive intervention. And for those that need it, then we need more. It's really a community support that was imagined back in the 60s and 70s when we deinstitutionalized our mental health hospitals, but the community response didn't meet the need. And, we've been trying to catch up ever since. And there really are so few, if an individual struggles with behavioral health issues and they might qualify for assisted living, but there are so few assisted living facilities that are really designed to provide that kind of very close staffing support. So it's really a challenge, and we need more facilities in our communities that can provide the staff support that some people need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. That's a lot of information you've given to us. It's wonderful. Yes. And you keep referring to community action, that we need to work on this at a local level as well as state and national. So
yes, I really do support both a direct service approach and any advocacy approach that directs the funding and the vision of solutions to homelessness toward models that work and are helping us make up for lost time, especially in terms of the lack of affordable housing that we have in our country. So both tracks are needed and necessary and important. So if this is an issue that moves your heart, if you, like me, thought, how on earth did we get to this and what can I do to help? Perhaps there is an agency in your county or your city that right now could use some volunteer support or could use the support of some Sunday school group to raise money or collect toboggans if you live in the part of the country where it's cold right now, like I do. So that direct support really does. It's important to agencies. We need it to get through the day and to provide meaningful services. And we need the advocacy so that we can create a better day and a better community down the road.
Well, thank you so very much, Maria, for all of that and for information and inspiration. And thank you, Justice listeners, for sharing this time and space with us today. We hope you're inspired and have learned from Maria. And are you ready to make a difference within your own community? If not now, tell me when. We hope you have enjoyed this episode and will share it with others. Talk with you soon.